This video is brought to you by support from viewers like yourself through Patreon.
So I'm planning a few business trips this year to go to audio shows, and so see some of you guys there at the Montreal Audio Fest and the Expona Audio Show in Chicago. But I'm testing a bunch of these like Bluetooth devices right now to have something with me to take on airplanes, hotels, cab rides, what have you for my downtime. And as I was going through these devices, usually I'm not a fan of talking about the sound quality, the raw performance of these kind of DACs. For me, it's more about functionality and features and how well it connects and all that. And usually it all connects well these days and they sound decent, but nothing, again, worth talking about on my channel to rave about or be excited about. But this one actually got me pretty excited. This one is a $170 DAC and it really stood out to me. It's called the SLASH6 and this is raw performance wise for me comparable to $500 DACs or DACs under $1,000. I would say it compares and is comparable. For whatever it's worth, I personally like it a lot better than a lot of the topping or SMSL DACs under $1,000. Personal take. And this is made in Korea, 100% made in Korea, and it is using 4 ESS DAC chips in here, so it's a quad DAC. And of course the price point is attractive, but you can also get it on Amazon for easy return in case you don't like it. So I thought it was a pretty interesting product to cover on this channel. It is a USB-C powered DAC, so you can plug this into your laptop, phone, tablet, computer, or what have you. Now, this USB-C plug also receives both power and signal at the same time through this USB-C, and we'll talk more about that in the later part of this video. But there is a 3.5mm headphone jack as well for your headphones. Now, is this going to drive your power-hungry headphones? Probably not. It's not meant for that. It's not designed for that. This is more of a portable, semi-portable device. So it's gonna power, earphones in your monitors, portable headphones, and it has optical input and output to connecting to your TV or other media sources. And honestly, for a small unit like this, I think it's very versatile of a unit. And I think the next thing that's most obvious, that's sticking out quite literally, is the RCA male plugs on this, which is kind of unique. And this is meant to connect to a lot of the integrated amplifiers and amplifiers out there directly without any cable or anything like that. So very easy to use. However, of course, there are some units out there that won't be compatible with this kind of spacing between the RCA plug, as some integrated amplifiers will have different spacing. If you're using monoblock amplifiers like me, then you will need an adapter. And thankfully, this is a really well thought out product because it actually comes with an adapter. It has a female to female adapter that I just plug in. And now you can use your own RCA cables, just like a normal, output from a DAC. So that's quite nice to see that they actually thought this through. And again, as mentioned before, this is a Bluetooth receiver. So once you plug these male connectors, either using the female adapters or just directly, then now you can play music right away by connecting this to Bluetooth with your phone. Now it does support all the latest codec like LDAC, aptX HD, aptX Adaptive, and so on. So it's a very nice unit. It plays back 24-bit through Bluetooth, so pretty nice. I mean, the sound quality of the Bluetooth out of this is quite impressive, and I'm no fan of Bluetooth, as you guys know, but I think it's getting there. I think it's getting really close and definitely usable in high fidelity systems. And honestly, I think that not just for the money, but just in comparison to a lot of the cheesy Bluetooth devices out there just like this that I've gotten in, I think this just speaks to me in sound quality. The raw performance, the raw sound quality of this unit is actually quite good, enough for me to fall in love with it under $1,000. So yeah, I really like the sound of this device right here. Now, I did test this unit using USB-C connected to my laptop or computer. As well, I tested the Bluetooth capability, and honestly, I like them almost equally. I mean, even though I do have a bias towards Bluetooth connection, I thought the sound quality was pretty consistent even through Bluetooth in comparison to the USB-C port here. And the main theme that it seems to bring to the table, the main sound quality advantage with this device seems to be the micro details that really come through. Really good, nice micro details, airy presentation, lots of clarity, but not in a sharp way. And it has really a phenomenal amount of bass and control and texture. So really like that. So micro detail bass is something that's consistently brought to the table when I use this. And that micro detail and bass is comparable to actually a lot more expensive DACs out there. And the reason I make a big deal out of this is because under $1,000, I really haven't heard a DAC like this small and this affordable, do micro detail and bass like a high-end unit does. So I was quite intrigued by the sound quality of this little thing because of that. Now, I want to set the expectations clear because while it is comparable or better than a lot of the under $1,000 DACs that I've tried, believe it or not, this little device, that's pretty amazing. But I also want to make sure to consider that, this is not going to be DACs above $1,000 in my opinion, usually. And the reason I think that it hits a kind of a breaking point with that $1,000 mark is because the sound staging and the refinement isn't quite there. And once you get to that $1,000 mark of DACs and above, I think the refinement and the soundstage is quite better than this DAC. Again, don't mistake me, for the price, I mean, amazing soundstage and amazing everything, honestly, for this price, but I don't think the refinement and the soundstage is quite there compared to more expensive DACs. And more precisely, when it comes to sound staging, when I hook up this DAC, it's more in between the loudspeakers. The soundstage, everything that's happening is somewhat limited to the plane of the loudspeakers. It doesn't stretch out, it doesn't stretch in. It's pretty much a pretty intimate sounding soundstage. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but again, it's a $170 DAC. And I don't think people expect it at this price, but that kind of refined analog feeling without sharp edges with a 3D soundstage that wraps around you on much more elaborate setups like my Arender N20 and the PS Audio Gold Stellar DAC combo, it just doesn't happen with the SLASH6. It's not a sharp or bright sounding DAC, like it's not a harsh sounding DAC in my opinion. It never kind of bothered me that way. However, it's also not a DAC that is smooth and super refined to where it feels like analog. There is some edge to it, there is some excitement to it, and sparkle and kind of crispiness to it. So some people may really like that actually, but for me, it just is not as refined as some of the high-end gear that I play around with. So, there's that. But again, for this price, you shouldn't be expecting that. But that's how good this DAC is that I'm comparing it to much more expensive, elaborate setups because that's what it gives. And I was quite surprised by the performance it gives for the price and for the size, quite alarming. And honestly, the imaging is quite good. It is within the soundstage given, of course. So within the soundstage given, the depiction of instruments, the separation of instruments, the vocals is very clear. There is no kind of jumbled up mess going on. Separation is excellent on this, really nice resolution. And there is kind of a spotlit kind of sound. So when the separation is really good, I kind of say it's spotlit. So it's almost like each performance has performers, the guitarist, the singer, and so on has a spotlit performance going on. And that's kind of what you get with this, which is again, something I don't expect under $1,000, but you do get it here. Now, obviously, as some of you guys know, I'm a soundstage guy. I like my holographic 3D soundstage. So I tried my best to kind of, play around with this thing, try to get the soundstage to open up more, and it usually just never worked. It just soundstage was stuck in between the speakers. But by chance, actually, I grabbed a charger that I was using for my camera gear, plugged it into this, and it actually opened up the soundstage. Now, not in an immense way, but now the soundstage wasn't so much in between the speakers, but more of a 45-degree angle. So it's still not holographic 3D or kind of wrapping around soundstage that you get, but you get a pretty wide soundstage, 45-degree, quite exceptional soundstaging going on. And I was quite surprised by that. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Now, this charger was a GAN charger. I've been quite fascinated with the GAN technology after reviewing the AGD amplifiers and purchasing it myself. And so I had bought this charger to charge my camera gear more efficiently and faster, and I just decided to grab it randomly just by chance and plug it in, and it gave me that 45-degree wider soundstage, which I was like, whoa. It also brought out a little bit, not too much, again, a little bit of better refinement, a little bit more smoother kind of textured sound that I expect from high-end gear. And that was quite a pleasant surprise. Now, this was in comparison to a generic USB charger. The generic charger was just a non-GAN fed charger that was lying around in the house that I was using, and surely enough, when I switched back to the generic charger, back and forth between the GAN fed and the non-generic charger, the GAN fed always gave me that 45-degree open soundstage, while the non-GAN fed generic charger still stuck in between the speakers, that soundstage. So that was quite interesting. So I thought, well, if I'm gonna be traveling with this thing, it needs power always, and we'll talk about that. That's one of the downside of this device. I always needed power, so maybe I should add a battery pack to it. So the battery pack was interesting because the battery pack I thought was going to be the best out of the three because the whole off-grid, battery pack idea, but actually it was the worst out of the three for me. Right, so first of all, the sound was leaner sounding. The bass was still full. The bass was still similar amount, similar impactfulness, similar tactility and texture, really good quality. But the mid-range and high frequency was now leaner, a little bit more detail-oriented, definitely more sparkle and air. So if you're someone that likes that kind of presentation, then sure. But for me, it was just not my favorite. And that was true for the headphone output as well. The headphone was more leaner, more sparkly, more detailed oriented, and I didn't quite like that, especially with some headphones, because it was borderline bright for me at that point. So not my favorite kind of way to power this. And again, it's not the craziest idea, by the way, to carry around a battery pack with this thing, because again, you don't have to use such a big battery pack like I do. They make slim battery packs these days. That's quite reasonable to carry around with a device like this. So it's not the craziest idea, but again, not my favorite. My favorite would be the GAN fed charger for sound quality alone. For me, it just sounded more analog out of the three chargers I've tried, or charging methods I've tried. Personally, for me, I thought the SLASH6 was a great pairing to vintage gear like the Dynaco and vintage receivers alike. And with that kind of vintage gear that has that romantic kind of classic vintage sound that some people like, that I like, when you hook up the SLASH6 to it, you seem to get more micro detail, a little bit more life, airiness to the chain with great bass dynamics added, but without, tilting the entire tonality so that you no longer get that vintage classic sound. You still get that vintage classic sound, but with a little bit more resolution, with a little bit more life and airiness to it, which I thought was a nice balance there. Now, you may have guessed, but I also liked it with modern gear that's more neutral to warm type of sound. Like the Boris NX2s that I have going on right now, the Bucard S400 Mark II, Sennheiser HT600 headphones. Yes, it just barely managed to power that headphone. Billy Amp Mark I and Mark II, AGD monoblocks, Iota VX combo, NAT monoblocks, and the list goes on. But I think you get the point. So with warmer and neutral gear, same thing goes. Instead of tilting the entire tonality of the system, it seems to keep the tonality of the system. So if it's warm, it's gonna be warm. This is not a device that's gonna tilt the tonality of your system, but instead it's gonna add micro detail, airiness, a little bit of that higher resolution feel to the sound, but without, again, tilting that tonality of the system. So if your system is warm, it's gonna be still warm. If you are getting this to make your system sound more neutral or more colder or brighter sounding, this is not it. It just won't do that. It just seems to add micro detail and a little bit more nuance and resolution to the sound. And so it's a nice kind of like a seasoning to the sound. But that brings me to something that I really dislike about these types of DACs, and that's no exception with the SLASH6. You have one USB-C port that is meant for both receiving power and receiving signal, or for solely receiving power when using Bluetooth. So you always need power plugged into it one way or the other, so it's semi-portable. I guess it can be fully portable if you want to walk around with a battery pack attached to it, like I mentioned. And again, they do make small, slim battery pack these days. But like I mentioned, it still sounds good, but not the best with a battery pack unless you like a more detail-oriented sound with your headphones, like I mentioned. And when you're using it for stereo, you either have to choose to use the USB-C for power or for both power and signal, which I personally think sounds best with the GAN fed charger, like I said, but then you are stuck using Bluetooth with this unit. Thankfully, the Bluetooth on this sounds good, really good. But if you use the USB-C for both power and signal by connecting your laptop or streamer in your stereo system, then now you don't get that wider 45 degrees soundstage because you're not able to connect to the GAN charger or any other external power supply for that matter. I personally think it'll be a game changer if they added a second USB-C port instead of just having one. So if you have two USB-C, then there's more flexibility. You can use one of the USB-C ports for using GAN chargers or power supply of your choice to squeeze out that last bit of performance out of this DAC, while using the other USB-C port for your laptop, for your phone, and so on, so that you're not always forced to use Bluetooth if you opt to use your separate charger. Now, to be fair, it's not a knock on the SLASH6. This is just a product category thing. It seems to be that this category of products seems to have all the same similar limitations, but it certainly would be interesting to see a company or someone actually implement what I just talked about. Now, apparently this is a hit product in Korea. It's doing very well in Korea. So I read some Korean reviews online, whatever I can find that I could understand, because, I wanted to know if I'm the crazy one to think that this actually competes under $1,000 with standalone external DACs, for under $1,000. And thankfully, there's a lot of reviews out there that seems to agree and say the exact same thing. People in Korea are saying that this little device is amazing in detail, amazing clarity and transparency, amazing bass, and so on. And some reporting the same thing that I said in the video, a more narrow soundstage compared to their more elaborate streaming or playback systems. But most importantly, many say that this type of sound quality, the micro detail and the bass quality, is hard to come by around this price point, let alone for much more. Now, for under $1,000, I think honestly speaking, the bass quality out of this is pretty crazy and pretty good. But can you get a similar quality DAC out there for under $1,000 that performs as well? Yes, I think so. Like the Cambridge Magic DAC that I have going on sounds really great in the bass region. Now, different types of bass. I think this is a more faster, quicker, impactful, tactile bass, and the Magic DAC is more rounder, more luscious bass, but nevertheless comparable. I think where it really shines is the micro detail. And I personally haven't heard a DAC under $1,000 that does micro detail as well as this DAC right here, even though it's very tiny. I think it's almost, not quite, but almost at the level of the Denafrips Ares 2. It really is that good. So I'll be at the Expona HiFi show as well as the Montreal Audio Fest that's coming up. So if you see me there, I'll be carrying around this thing. So if you want to give it a try, feel free to stop me. I don't mind whatsoever. This little thing is a lot of fun. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I hope this video was helpful. This is what I do on this channel. Try to find little gems like this. Not always little, but gems in the hi-fi. So if you enjoy this video, then please click a like and of course, subscribe and do all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys on my next video. Until next time.